a leader born of simplicity. The story of Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA, the second Caliph of Islam, cannot be told without first understanding the man himself. Before he became a ruler, before he walked the streets of Medina at night in disguise, before his name became a symbol of justice for centuries to come, he was a man shaped by hardship, simplicity, and a fierce sense of responsibility. He was born in Mecca around 13 years after the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. His family belonged to the respected Quraysh tribe, though they were not among the wealthiest. From a young age, Umar RA worked hard, tending to his father's camels and learning the rugged discipline of desert life. He grew tall and strong, his presence commanding, his voice deep and firm. Before Islam, he was known for his fiery temper and unyielding strength. Yet Allah had chosen him for greatness. The same strength that once made him oppose Islam would later make him one of its greatest defenders. The transformation through Islam. Umar RA initially resisted Islam with passion. He saw it as a threat to the traditions of his people. The famous story of his conversion tells of the day he set out, sword in hand, determined to silence the message of Muhammad once and for all. But Allah guided his steps to the house of his sister Fatima RA, where he heard verses of the Quran being recited. The words pierced his heart like no sword ever could. They melted his pride and revealed a truth that could not be denied. He embraced Islam that very day, and with him came a new strength for the Muslim community. His courage, intellect, and determination became a shield for the weak and a weapon against oppression. From then on, Umar RA stood firm by the side of the Prophet through trials, battles, and sacrifices. He was not a man of half measures. When he believed with all his heart. Umar RA as a companion of the Prophet. Throughout the Prophet's life, Umar RA was among his closest companions. He was known for his straightforwardness. When he saw something wrong, he spoke against it. When he saw injustice, he opposed it without fear of anyone but Allah. His sense of accountability was so strong that even the Prophet once said, "If there were to be a prophet after me, it would have been Umar." Sunan al-Tirmidhi. Umar's words often coincided with revelations of the Quran. He once suggested to the Prophet that the wives of the believers should observe proper veiling, and soon after, Allah revealed the verse of hijab. He urged the Muslims to take the Maqam Ibrahim as a place of prayer, and revelation confirmed it. Such instances showed the depth of his faith and his closeness to divine guidance. His selection as Caliph. When the Prophet returned to his Lord, Abu Bakr RA became the first Caliph. Umar RA stood firmly by his side, helping him stabilize the Muslim community during a time of turbulence. His wisdom and strength were crucial in quelling rebellions and ensuring the survival of the Ummah. Before his death, Abu Bakr RA nominated Umar RA as his successor after consulting with the companions. Though Umar RA was known for his stern nature, the companions recognized his sincerity, justice, and unshakable fear of Allah. Thus began one of the most remarkable periods in Islamic history, the simplicity of a ruler. When Umar RA became Caliph, he could have chosen the life of luxury. The Muslim empire was expanding rapidly. Wealth flowed into Medina from newly conquered lands, and treasures filled the treasury. But Umar RA lived as though nothing had changed. His clothes were patched, his food was simple, often just bread and oil. He had no guards outside his home, no throne in his court. He sat among his people, listening to their complaints directly. His house was no palace, but a modest dwelling that reflected his disdain for worldly pleasures. When ambassadors from foreign lands visited, they were astonished to find the ruler of a vast empire sitting on the bare ground, eating coarse bread, without any sign of royalty. But to Umar RA, this was true leadership, humility before Allah and service to the people. His sense of justice. Umar RA became known as Al-Faruq, the one who distinguishes between right and wrong. Justice was the very foundation of his rule. He did not tolerate oppression, whether from the powerful or the weak. He once declared, "Since when have you enslaved the people when their mothers bore them free?" This statement, made when a governor's son struck a poor man, echoes through history as a timeless declaration of human rights. He believed that justice was not optional for a leader, it was his foremost duty. He removed governors who misused their authority, and he personally checked the behavior of officials. If any man, no matter how high his position, wronged another, Umar RA ensured justice was done. The fear of accountability. What made Umar RA extraordinary was not just his justice, but his fear of failing in it. He constantly reminded himself that leadership was a trust from Allah, not a privilege. He once said, "If a mule stumbles on the road of a rock, I fear Allah will ask me why I did not smooth the way for it." Imagine a ruler of an empire stretching from Persia to Egypt worrying about a mule tripping on a distant road. Such was his level of responsibility. This deep fear of accountability shaped his daily life. He did not consider himself superior to the poorest man in Medina. Instead, he felt answerable for their well-being. This sense of duty kept him awake at night, pacing the streets, ensuring no one suffered under his watch. The birth of the night patrols. It was out of this fear of Allah and love for the people that Umar RA began his famous night patrols. He realized that reports from governors and officials were not enough. A leader needed to see with his own eyes, hear with his own ears, and feel with his own heart. Disguised in plain clothes, with only his servant Aslam accompanying him, he would wander the streets of Medina after dark. He listened for cries, watched for shadows, and knocked on doors when he heard distress. He sought not recognition, but truth, so that the hidden pains of the people might reach him, and he could address them before they reached Allah's court. It was during one such patrol that the story of the crying children and the boiling pot of stones would unfold, an incident that would immortalize Umar RA as the embodiment of justice and mercy in leadership. Why his example still matters. Before that famous night, it is essential to grasp why Umar RA lived the way he did. He was not merely a ruler. He was a servant of Allah who understood the weight of responsibility. His humility, his simplicity, his justice, and his nightly patrols all stemmed from one conviction: that on the day of judgment, when all rulers are questioned about their people, Umar ibn al-Khattab RA wanted to stand before Allah and say, "I did my best. I did not sleep while they were awake in hunger. I did not rest while they were restless in need." A silent night in Medina. The city of Medina lay in silence beneath the velvet cloak of the night. The stars shimmered like pearls scattered across the desert sky, and a cool breeze drifted through the narrow lanes, carrying with it the faint scent of palm trees and sand. In the courtyards of modest mud brick houses, lamps had been extinguished, children curled up beside their mothers, and men, weary from the day's labor, rested in deep slumber. The streets, so lively during the day with traders, farmers, and travelers, now appeared deserted, as if the whole city had paused to breathe in peace. But not every soul was asleep. In one corner of the city, in the simple house of the Caliph, the commander of the faithful, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA, prepared himself for yet another of his nightly rounds. He wrapped his plain cloak tightly, pulled his turban low, and stepped out quietly into the stillness. At his side walked his loyal companion and servant, Aslam, who had grown accustomed to these night journeys but never ceased to feel awe for the purpose behind them. The habit of night patrols. This was not the first time Umar RA left his home under the cover of darkness. Since becoming Caliph, he had developed this habit, to patrol the streets, disguised and unrecognized, to see for himself the condition of the people. Reports from governors and officials could never satisfy him. He wanted to hear the sighs of the hungry, the whispers of the widows, the laughter of the children, and the concerns of the poor, directly, without filters. For Umar RA, leadership was not a privilege, but a heavy trust from Allah. He often repeated words that echoed like thunder in the hearts of those who heard them. If a mule stumbles on the road of a rock, I fear Allah will ask me why I did not smooth the way for it. If the welfare of even an animal concerned him, how could he rest while human beings might be suffering under his rule? Walking beside Aslam. Aslam walked slightly behind, his steps soft on the sandy ground. He watched his master with admiration and a little concern. Umar RA had aged since the days when he was a fiery young warrior, yet his strength had not left him, and his heart burned brighter than ever with responsibility. Amir al-Mu'minin, Aslam whispered softly, careful not to disturb the stillness. You have carried the burdens of the day already. Why not allow yourself some rest tonight? Umar RA slowed his pace, his shadow stretching long in the moonlight. He turned to Aslam, his eyes gleaming beneath the folds of his turban. Aslam, he said firmly but gently, do you want Umar to rest while perhaps a widow goes hungry? Shall I sleep in comfort while a child of Medina cries from thirst? No, Aslam. The rulers before us may have slept, but Umar will not. Not until he is sure his people can rest without fear. His words carried no arrogance, only the weight of a man who truly believed he would one day stand before Allah and be asked, what did you do with the trust of the Ummah? The city in darkness. The two men walked through alleys lined with simple houses. They passed by a baker's shop, its clay oven cold and empty, and a market stall where leftover dates were covered with cloth to be sold the next morning. A dog barked faintly in the distance, and somewhere, the rustle of palm fronds swayed like whispers. Medina was safe, but safety was not enough for Umar. He wanted justice, fairness, and provision for all. They came across a house from which the sound of Quran recitation flowed softly. Umar RA paused, listening with tears glistening in his eyes. These are the voices that make Medina blessed, he murmured. When people remember their Lord in the quiet of the night, mercy descends upon the land. Further ahead, another house caught their attention. A lamp flickered inside, and a man coughed heavily. Through the thin walls, they heard a woman's voice soothing him. Umar RA prayed silently. O Allah, ease their suffering. He noted the location in his heart, intending to send help through the Bait al-Mal if the illness lingered. Reflections of responsibility. As they walked, Umar RA often shared his reflections with Aslam. Aslam, he said, do you know why I do this? It is because I fear the day when the scrolls of deeds are opened. Allah will not ask me how many battles I fought, nor how many lands I conquered. He will ask me if I fulfilled the rights of the weak, the poor, and the orphans. If a man slept hungry while I ate to my fill, how shall I answer? His voice trembled with sincerity, and Aslam lowered his gaze, ashamed at even suggesting his master should rest. He realized then that the sleeplessness of Umar was not weakness, but the strength of a leader who understood accountability before Allah. Past incidents on the patrols. That night was not the first time Umar RA had discovered hardship. As they walked, Aslam recalled other nights when unexpected truths had come to light. Once, they had found a man drunk, violating the law of Allah. Instead of punishing him publicly, Umar RA wept in private, asking, what fault of mine made this man fall into sin? On another night, they had encountered orphans who had no father to protect them, and Umar ensured that a monthly stipend reached their home. These experiences shaped his rule and set an example for all leaders to come. Governance was not about palaces, thrones, or crowns, but about service, sacrifice, and sleepless nights in care for the people. The philosophy of seeing with his own eyes. Umar RA never trusted reports alone. Even the most honest governor could not capture the hidden sigh of a mother or the silent hunger of a child. He believed that walking the streets, hearing the voices, and seeing the conditions himself gave him a truer picture. Aslam, he said suddenly as they turned another lane. Remember this, a ruler who closes his eyes to the people will one day have his eyes closed by Allah. Leadership is not about being praised, but about being feared by the unjust and loved by the oppressed. His words etched themselves in the night like inscriptions on stone. Aslam nodded silently, feeling the truth settle deep in his chest. Approaching the outskirts, their footsteps eventually carried them away from the heart of the city and toward the outskirts. The houses grew fewer, the alleys widened, and silence deepened. The land stretched into patches of barren sand, with the occasional cluster of palm trees swaying against the night sky. Here, the poorest often lived, in tents or makeshift shelters beyond the busy life of the city. Umar RA always made it a point to patrol these areas. If any soul is neglected, he once told Aslam, it is often those at the edges, far from the heart. And so Umar must go to the edges. A leader's loneliness. As they walked, Aslam noticed a heaviness in Umar's steps. Not physical weakness, but a burden unseen. Leadership, he realized, was a lonely path. Though Umar had companions, scholars, and advisors, No one could share the exact weight of his responsibility before Allah. It was a trust he carried alone, and it gave him no rest. "Do you ever feel alone, Amir al-Mu'minin?" Aslam asked gently. Umar smiled faintly, the lines of age and care etched into his face. "Alone? Yes, Aslam. But when I remember Allah, I know I am never truly alone. And when I see the faces of the poor smiling because their needs are met, I feel surrounded by 1,000 companions." The tent in the distance. At last, as they reached the further edge of Medina, a faint glow appeared in the distance. A small tent stood against the backdrop of the desert, a weak fire flickering in front of it. From inside came the faint murmur of a woman's voice, broken by the cries of children. Umar RA stopped abruptly, his keen ears catching the sound before Aslam did. He raised a hand for silence, his eyes narrowing in concern. The cries pierced the stillness of the night, a sound that twisted the heart with sorrow. "Aslam," Umar said quietly, "do you hear that?" This is why Umar does not sleep. He quickened his pace, the cloak billowing behind him as he moved toward the tent, ready to uncover yet another story of struggle in the land he was entrusted to protect. The cry of the hungry. The faint light of the fire grew clearer as Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA and his companion Aslam approached the lonely tent at the edge of Medina. The desert night, which had moments ago seemed so calm, now carried with it the piercing cries of children. Their sobs mingled with the crackling of firewood, a sound that gnawed at the heart of any listener. Umar RA slowed his steps, his senses sharpening, his heart heavy with foreboding. He motioned for Aslam to stay slightly behind as he advanced closer. The tent was worn, its fabric patched and frayed, swaying weakly in the night wind. Inside, the shadow of a woman moved about, her shoulders hunched with exhaustion, her hands busy at a pot set upon the fire. Around her, several small figures sat on the ground, their tiny bodies trembling, their cries filling the air with sorrow. A mother's pain. The woman's voice trembled as she whispered words of comfort to her children. "Sleep, my darlings, sleep. The food will soon be ready. Just a little longer." But her words lacked conviction. Her eyes darted to the pot as though ashamed. The pot simmered, yet the smell of food was absent. Instead, there was only the sharp hiss of water bubbling over stones. The pot contained nothing that could ease their hunger, just a cruel illusion to quiet their cries. The children, too young to understand, wiped their tears with small hands, staring at the fire with weary eyes. Their cries softened into whimpers, though their hollow cheeks and weak frames bore witness to days of hunger. Umar RA stood frozen for a moment, his heart struck like an arrow. This was not just poverty, this was despair, and despair in the very city of the Prophet. The first exchange. Stepping forward, Umar RA cleared his throat gently so as not to startle her. "Peace be upon you, O sister," he said softly. The woman turned, her face illuminated by the flickering fire. Her eyes were tired, her features thin and drawn with hardship. She looked at the two strangers warily, clutching her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "And upon you be peace," she replied, her voice cautious. "What troubles you on this night?" Umar asked, though his heart already knew. The woman sighed heavily, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What troubles me? Look before you, and you will see. My children cry from hunger, and I have nothing to feed them. No bread, no dates, not even milk. I placed this pot upon the fire with only water and stones, so they might believe food was cooking. Perhaps they will wait until sleep takes them, sparing them the torment of hunger for one night." Her words struck Umar RA like a blow. He staggered slightly, lowering his gaze to the ground, his hands clenching into fists. The mother's anguish. The woman continued, her voice bitter, unaware of who stood before her. "Where is Umar, the leader of the believers? He takes the title of Caliph, yet does he know the condition of the poor? Does he see the suffering of widows and orphans in the dark of night? No, he eats while we starve. He sleeps while our children cry." Her words were sharp, yet they came from pain, not malice. Umar RA felt them pierce his heart more deeply than any sword ever had in battle. He did not reveal his identity, nor did he rebuke her. Instead, tears welled in his eyes, hidden by the shadows of the night. He whispered to himself, "Woe to you, Umar. You have let one of your flocks suffer hunger while you were unaware. Aslam's reaction. Aslam, standing nearby, shifted uneasily. He wanted to defend his master, to reveal that the very man she accused stood before her, trembling with sorrow. But Umar RA raised his hand slightly, silencing him. No, Aslam, Umar murmured under his breath. Let her speak. Her words are the truth. If she condemns Umar, it is because Umar has failed her. The servant bowed his head, understanding the decision to act. Umar RA straightened, his resolve firm. He addressed the woman gently. Oh sister, remain patient a little longer. By Allah, your condition will not remain as it is. Tell me, what do you need? The woman looked at him with a mix of bitterness and exhaustion. What do I need? I need bread to fill these small stomachs. I need milk to ease their cries. But you are a stranger passing by. What can you do for us? Her hopelessness stung him. Without another word, Umar RA turned swiftly to Aslam. Come, he ordered. His steps quickened, carrying him back toward the heart of the city. Aslam, he said urgently, his voice thick with emotion. To the Beit al-Mal at once. By Allah, Umar will not let this night pass without easing their hunger. The weight of responsibility. As they hurried back, Aslam glanced at his master. The caliph's face was pale, his eyes glistening with tears that refused to fall. He muttered to himself repeatedly, Woe to Umar if even one child sleeps hungry. What will I say to Allah on the day of judgment? Will he not ask me, why did you not feed them when I gave you wealth and authority? The words echoed into the night as if carried by the wind itself, a reminder of the crushing responsibility of leadership. Reflections along the way. On their way, Umar RA passed the quiet houses of Medina again, but now the silence felt heavier, almost accusing. He looked at the darkened windows and imagined how many others might be suffering unseen. He whispered to Aslam, almost in anguish, how many tents like hers might exist tonight, hidden in the darkness? How many cries go unheard by Umar? Shall I stand before Allah and say, I did not know? But he gave me ears and eyes so that I might know. Aslam, moved by his master's sincerity, replied softly, Amir al-Mu'minin, you do more than any ruler has ever done. You walk the streets, you ask, you search. But Umar shook his head. No, Aslam, until no child goes hungry, Umar has not done enough. Arrival at Beit al-Mal. At last, they reached the Beit al-Mal, the treasury of the Muslims. The building stood quiet in the night, its doors locked. Umar RA himself called for the guard to open them. Recognizing the caliph, the guard rushed forward, bowing in respect. Amir al-Mu'minin, the guard said, at this hour? What brings you here? Umar RA raised his hand impatiently. Bring me a sack of flour, some ghee, and dates. Quickly, the guard obeyed without question, and soon a heavy sack was brought forth. Umar RA bent down and hoisted it onto his back. The weight was immense, but he carried it without hesitation. Aslam, he said as his servant reached out to help. Do you wish to carry my burden for me? As your servant, Amir al-Mu'minin, it is my duty, Aslam replied earnestly. But Umar RA shook his head, his voice trembling with both humility and fear of Allah. No, Aslam, will you carry my burden on the day of judgment? It is Umar who will be asked about this woman and her children, not you. By Allah, I will carry it myself. The heavy sack and the caliph's silent tears. When Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA heard the cries of those hungry children, his heart trembled. The words of the mother, who had admitted she was boiling stones in water to give her children false hope, burned inside him like fire. He realized that in his responsibility as Amir al-Mu'minin, leader of the believers, one family under his care was suffering in silence, unknown to the rest of society. For a man whose entire being revolved around justice, accountability before Allah, and compassion for the weak, this was unbearable. He looked at his servant Aslam with urgency and said, Come, we must go to Beit al-Mal, the state treasury. The night was quiet, the stars were glittering, and Medina was asleep. Yet the Caliph of Islam rushed through the streets with the pace of a man burdened with a mountain on his shoulders. His thoughts raced. What answer will I give to Allah on the day of judgment if one child sleeps hungry in my land? At the treasury of the Muslims. When Hazrat Umar RA reached Beit al-Mal, he unlocked it himself. Inside, rows of sacks filled with flour, wheat, dates, and jars of ghee were lined up. The treasury was not a place of luxury, but a storehouse for the survival of the people. Hazrat Umar's eyes immediately fell upon a large sack of flour. "Aslam," he said, pointing to it, "bring me that sack and also a jar of ghee." Aslam obeyed, but seeing the size of the sack, he turned toward Hazrat Umar RA and said respectfully, "Amir al-Mu'minin, allow me to carry it. You are the Caliph. Your body is frail from fasting and leading the people. Let me lift this burden for you." But Hazrat Umar RA straightened himself and placed his hand firmly on the sack. His eyes glowed with determination as he replied in words that became immortal in history. "No, Aslam. Will you carry my burden on the day of judgment? It is I who will be asked about these children. It is Umar who must answer to Allah. I cannot place this weight on your shoulders when it belongs to mine." With that, Hazrat Umar RA bent down, lifted the heavy sack of flour upon his back, and tightened the cloth around his chest so it would not slip. Aslam, seeing this, was filled with awe. He wanted to insist, but the commanding humility in Umar's voice silenced him. The walk back to the hungry. The Caliph, leader of the world's fastest growing empire, now walked through the silent streets of Medina like an ordinary laborer carrying food on his back. His steps were heavy, but his heart carried a heavier load. The accountability of the hungry and the poor. Every step reminded him of Allah's words in the Quran. Indeed, Allah commands you to render trust to whom they are due, and when you judge between people to judge with justice. Surah An-Nisa 4:58. The trust of leadership was upon him, and tonight he would honor it with his own sweat. Aslam walked beside him quietly, sometimes extending his hand to steady the sack if it tilted, but Hazrat Umar RA refused to let go. His breath grew heavy, his shoulders strained, but he bore it with dignity. At the tent of hunger, at last, they reached the poor tent on the outskirts of Medina. The faint firelight flickered, the pot of water still boiled with stones, and the children were weakly crying in exhaustion. Hazrat Umar RA placed the sack of flour on the ground, gently wiped the sweat from his forehead, and immediately set to work. He opened the sack, measured flour into his hands, and mixed it with water. Then he asked Aslam to open the jar of ghee. But instead of ordering his servant to cook, Hazrat Umar RA himself crouched by the fire. "Aslam," he said, "step back. Tonight, I will prepare the food with my own hands. These children must eat from Umar's cooking." The flames warmed his face as he bent close, glowing gently to keep them alive. The smoke stung his eyes, but he did not flinch. He kneaded the dough, mixed in the ghee, and placed pieces on the fire. The smell of real food began to rise into the air. The children's smiles. The children, who had been watching silently, began to stir with hope. Their small eyes widened at the sight of real bread forming in the pan. One by one, Hazrat Umar RA handed the pieces of bread, soft and warm, to the children. They devoured it eagerly, their cries turning into laughter. Their little hands reached out for more, and he gave them again. The mother sat in stunned silence, tears welling up in her eyes. She had no idea that the man before her, covered in flour and smoke, was the Caliph of the Muslims. For her, he was just a kind stranger who had lifted her family from despair. Hazrat Umar RA smiled through his tears. He watched the children laugh and play with each other as their hunger disappeared. A radiant joy filled his heart. He whispered to himself. Tonight, Umar did not sleep until he ensured his people could sleep. The silent vigil. Even after the children were fed and the fire had died down, Hazrat Umar RA did not leave immediately. He sat quietly near the tent, his head lowered, watching the children settle into peaceful sleep. Aslam, curious, asked, "Amir al-Mu'minin, why do you not return home? Your duty is complete, the children are full." Hazrat Umar RA replied softly, "I will not leave until I see them smile and fall asleep. I want to be certain that their cries have turned into laughter. Only then will Umar rest." So he sat there in silence, a tear sliding down his cheek, his hands folded in prayer. "O Allah, forgive me if I was late in fulfilling their right. Do not hold me accountable for what I did not know. Make me among those who care for the weak, for indeed you are the protector of all." the lesson of leadership. That night became one of the most famous examples of Islamic leadership in history. It showed that true authority is not about luxury or command. It is about service and responsibility. Hazrat Umar RA, who ruled lands stretching from Egypt to Persia, personally cooked food for poor children in a tent outside Medina. His name became a symbol of justice because he lived by the principle that a leader is the servant of his people. The legacy and martyrdom of Umar ibn al-Khattab RA. The days of Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA as Caliph had been filled with justice, sleepless nights of concern for his people, and unshakable dedication to Allah's command. But as time passed, whispers of destiny grew closer, for even the strongest men who walk this earth are not meant to remain forever. The expanding Ummah. By the later years of his caliphate, Islam had spread far beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Lands once thought unreachable now carried the sound of the adhan. From Persia to Syria, from Egypt to the lands of Iraq, the banner of Tawheed had been raised. Yet with expansion came enormous responsibility. Umar RA was not a ruler intoxicated by conquests. He was a servant of Allah carrying the heaviest of burdens. He would often be seen sitting on the bare ground, scribbling instructions to his governors, reminding them, "Fear Allah in your treatment of the people. Do not build palaces while they live in poverty. Rule as though you will be asked tomorrow by Allah about every soul under your authority." His humility was unmatched. Despite ruling the most powerful empire of his age, he wore patched clothes, slept under a tree without guards, and ate coarse bread with olive oil. Ambassadors from foreign lands who came to see the mighty leader of the Muslims were astonished to find him sitting in the dust with no throne, no guards, no crown, only a heart overflowing with justice. One Persian envoy once exclaimed, "You have ruled, you have been just, and now you sleep without fear. Oh Umar, you are truly the shepherd of your people." The burden of leadership. But Umar RA never saw himself as great. He saw only responsibility, heavy enough to crush a mountain. He would whisper in the darkness of the night, "If a mule were to stumble on the road of Iraq, I fear Allah will ask me, 'Oh Umar, why did you not pave the way for it?'" He constantly reminded his people that leadership was not a privilege, but a test. His love for justice was so absolute that even his family was not exempt. Once, his son was caught drinking a forbidden drink. The punishment was carried out swiftly, and Umar RA himself enforced it. His tears flowed as he held his son, but his commitment to Allah's law did not waver. This unwavering justice gave hope to the weak and struck fear into the oppressors. The world had not seen such balance between power and humility, between strength and compassion. The simplicity of his life. Though the Muslim treasury overflowed with wealth from newly conquered lands, Umar RA did not allow himself to live in luxury. His food was often bread and salt. His clothes were patched repeatedly. His house was simple, with no lavish ornaments, no silken carpets. When asked why he denied himself comfort, he would answer, "The pleasures of this world are short. I am only a traveler resting in the shade of a tree before continuing my journey." One day, a companion saw him lying on the bare ground with nothing but a brick under his head as a pillow. Tears filled the man's eyes. "O Amir al-Mu'minin," he said, "you rule the world yet live like this?" Umar RA smiled softly and replied, "This world is fleeting. I need nothing from it, but enough to keep me standing until I meet Allah." The night of destiny approaches, yet fate had written another test for the great Caliph. In the final years of his rule, a Persian slave named Abu Lulu'a harbored deep resentment. He complained about the jizya tax and about matters of his trade, but Umar RA did not allow injustice in his case. Hidden within this man's heart grew hatred, and he plotted a dark deed. One morning, Umar RA entered the mosque in Medina for far prayer. His voice was steady, his heart humble before Allah as he began the prayer. In the stillness of dawn, as the believers stood in rows, the assassin moved through the worshippers carrying a hidden double-bladed dagger. As Umar RA led the prayer, the man lunged forward and struck him multiple times. The wounds were deep and fatal. The congregation erupted in confusion, but Umar RA, bleeding heavily, cried out, "Complete your prayer." Do not stop the worship of Allah for the sake of Umar. He was carried away, his body weakened, his face pale, yet his soul radiant with faith. The final moments. Doctors tried to tend to his wounds, but it was clear he would not survive. His companions wept bitterly. Abdullah ibn Abbas, RA, and others stood by, their hearts shattered. But Umar, RA, remained calm, asking, "Has the prayer been completed?" When they answered yes, he smiled faintly. Alhamdulillah, there is no share for Umar in Islam if the prayer is lost. As his pain grew, he whispered repeatedly, "O Allah, bless me with martyrdom in your path, and let me die in the city of your messenger." Indeed, Allah answered his dua. When he realized his end was near, Umar, RA, called his son Abdullah ibn Umar, RA. He said, "My son, go to Aisha, RA, the mother of the believers. Say to her, Umar requests permission to be buried beside his two companions." The son returned with the blessed news. Aisha, RA, had granted permission. Tears flowed from Umar's eyes, not from fear, but from gratitude. He would rest beside his beloved Prophet Muhammad, SAW, and Abu Bakr, RA. The will of Umar, RA. In his final will, Umar, RA, left guidance for the Muslim Ummah. He appointed a council of 6 companions to choose the next caliph. He warned them never to divide, never to abandon justice, and always to rule by the Quran and Sunnah. He left no wealth behind except a small piece of land, a mule, and a few belongings. He instructed that any debt he owed should be repaid from his property. As the final moments came, Umar, RA, placed his head on the ground, dust touching his forehead. He whispered, "Woe to me, and woe to my mother, if Allah does not forgive me." Then, with the name of Allah on his lips, the great lion of Islam returned to his Lord. The Ummah weeps. When the news spread, Medina was overcome with grief. Men and women wept openly in the streets. Ali ibn Abi Talib, RA, said, "No one after him will ever be able to match his justice." Ibn Mas'ud, RA, declared, "When Umar died, half of knowledge was buried with him." Even the enemies of Islam admitted the greatness of Umar ibn al-Khattab, RA. They said, "The world was safer under Umar." Even wild animals knew of his justice. The eternal legacy. Centuries have passed, yet the story of Umar ibn al-Khattab, RA, continues to inspire hearts across the world. His name remains a symbol of justice, humility, and unwavering devotion to Allah. He was the shepherd who protected his flock, the ruler who feared Allah more than kings, the man who slept under a tree yet shook the thrones of emperors. His life teaches us that true power does not lie in crowns or armies, but in justice, sincerity, and submission to Allah. And so, the story of Umar ibn al-Khattab, RA, does not end with his martyrdom. It lives on in every believer who chooses justice over oppression, humility over pride, and faith over fear. The eternal legacy of Umar's Night Patrol. The incident of Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab, RA, carrying flour on his back and feeding hungry children underlines the highest standard of justice, compassion, and accountability. But the story did not end with just one night or one family. It became a timeless lesson for generations to come. A caliph with a sleepless conscience. After returning from the poor woman's tent, Hazrat Umar, RA, did not celebrate his act nor speak of it to others. He did not stand in the mosque the next morning and announce what he had done. Instead, he returned to his home quietly, praying in the depths of the night and asking Allah for forgiveness. For Umar, RA, serving the people was not about recognition, it was about duty. His conscience was so sensitive that even the possibility of one hungry child in Medina would disturb his peace. He saw himself not as a ruler, but as a shepherd responsible for every sheep under his care. A leadership without pride. What made Hazrat Umar, RA, stand out among leaders of the world was his refusal to let power or authority separate him from the ordinary people. He did not sit on a throne with guards, nor live in palaces surrounded by luxuries. Instead, he wore patched clothes, ate simple food, and walked in the marketplaces just like any other man. The Night Patrol incident is proof that Umar, RA, never allowed pride to blind him. Even when the woman insulted the caliph, not knowing who she was speaking to, Umar, RA, did not react in anger. He accepted her words as a reminder of his own responsibility. This humility and patience created an atmosphere of trust and love between the ruler and the ruled. Lessons for future generations. The story of Umar's RA Night Patrol is not just a moment in history, it is a moral code. It teaches leaders that true leadership is service, not privilege. Accountability is not optional, it is essential. Compassion is more powerful than authority. Justice must be felt in the lives of the poorest. Every time Muslims study this story, they are reminded of the sacred trust that leaders carry. Leadership in Islam is not about crowns and thrones, but about answering to Allah for the well-being of every individual under one's care. Umar's tears, the human side of power. When Umar RA sat near the fire, feeding the children and watching their smiles, tears rolled down his cheeks. It was not weakness, but the strength of a heart softened by faith. He knew that rulers are human, and their mistakes carry heavy consequences. His tears were prayers that Allah accept his effort, forgive his shortcomings, and make him a just shepherd. They were also a reminder that no one is too powerful to weep for the suffering of the weak. The day of judgment in his mind. Perhaps the most powerful statement of this story is when Hazrat Umar RA told his servant Aslam, "Will you carry my burden on the day of judgment?" This shows how deeply Umar RA lived with the awareness of the hereafter. Every action, every decision, every patrol was guided by the fear of standing before Allah. He was not afraid of losing his throne. He was afraid of losing Allah's mercy. The lasting inspiration. Centuries have passed since Umar ibn al-Khattab RA walked the streets of Medina at night. Yet, his example still echoes in sermons, classrooms, and households. Scholars write about him, poets praise him, and parents tell their children about the Caliph who carried flour on his back. The story remains a mirror for rulers today, many of whom live in palaces while their people suffer. It is also a lesson for ordinary people, reminding us that kindness, humility, and responsibility are qualities that define greatness, not wealth or power. Closing reflection. As the night ended in Medina and the children finally slept with full stomachs, Umar RA whispered softly to himself. Tonight, Umar did not sleep until he ensured his people could sleep. This simple sentence became his legacy. It was not recorded in royal decrees or carved into monuments, but it was written into the hearts of believers for all time. Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab RA, the commander of the faithful, lives on in history not for his conquests, wealth, or political power, but for his sleepless nights, his humble service, and his endless concern for the hungry and the forgotten.